So what causes a competition agency to be more or less effective? As we said previously, there's so many factors that can get in the way of our understanding of the relationship between a competition agency, a competition, and overall growth in the economy. To help us out, we show in Figure 12 a model of competition which we use in order to construct some of our cost-benefit analyses later. So starting with the extent of competition in a jurisdiction, we naturally see that competition affects output not only of big companies but SMEs, and of course if it affects output it also affects price and thus revenue. These differential impacts thus have four effects which we look at in our overall analysis. On the one hand, more competition, particularly amongst large companies, can result in destructive competition, whereby consumers or even producers just substitute one good for another good, and ultimately leads to higher prices as dominance becomes a more important issue. The costs of competition policy might actually exceed the benefits of making more competition. The second possible effect is that there's substitution in goods and services, but this lowers prices rather than raises prices. This is the usual effect that economists like to point to when increasing competition in a jurisdiction. Naturally, lower prices can benefit consumers and thus hopefully everyone else in the economy. Yet we know that competition amongst goods and services and the prices of those goods and services does not an economy make. Without looking at the important role of innovation, it's almost impossible to know the extent to which goods are competitive or even desirable to consumers. And thus the last two channels that we look at are the extent of innovation in markets and the extent to which that innovation helps to lower prices. If a competition law helps promote such innovation, then the benefits of such a law naturally exceed the costs. Yet, if innovation makes higher prices, then we assume that higher prices reflect higher values, and innovation with raising prices would result in the highest amount of welfare increase. Now remember, we said that competition policy only helps a country if an economy is becoming more competitive without becoming more innovative. Then you'll probably have destructive competition and an increase in concentration. Figure 17 shows the estimated impact of increases in competition if Brunei follows its peer group in terms of increasing the extent of competition within its borders, and we look at that relationship with the innovativeness of these various jurisdictions. Unsurprising is an overall positive relationship between the extent of competition and the extent of innovation in an economy. Naturally, we cannot know, and we do not even try to answer in this paper, the extent to which competition causes innovation or innovation causes competition, only to say that competition without innovation will more likely hurt than help. Figure 18 shows the extent of productivity in Brunei vis-a-vis other jurisdictions. In places like Singapore, even Malaysia, increases in competition have helped lead to overall economic growth because we've seen large investments in innovativeness and thus productivity. Whereas in other jurisdictions that have simply tried to rely on cost advantages, such as Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, we've seen productivity relatively lagging, and thus any attempt to impose or share best practices in competition law and policy will probably end up hurting producers in those jurisdictions rather than helping them.